Most of you have probably been thinking about Christmas, but I don't think you've probably been thinking about my Christmas ornaments. The materials for our project will include a piece of wood. Now you can use just about any wood that you run into. Me, I like to use the wood I find out in the woods. I guess that's why they call it woods. But no, I mean, somebody cut a tree down, some limbs hanging around. There's been a limb lying someplace, and you never know what patterns it may cause. This happens to be a piece of maple from my father-in-law's house, and I can tell by these rings in here this is going to have an interesting pattern. This is maple. We'll use that for the globe. For the finials, we'll use a piece of dark walnut. I don't know where this came from, but walnut is also indigenous to the great state of West Virginia. Maybe Ohio too, I don't know. But for the hook, we'll use the one of the signatures hooks we make for our ornaments, and the eyelet too, which we also make by hand. Well, like I said, this is going to be a two-part presentation, and the first thing we'll do is we'll mount the wood onto the lathe. We'll get it ready to turn, and then we'll turn it into a globe. And I like to have it slightly elongated in the middle. On the bottom part of the globe, and pretend that you're on a lathe and the horizontal is this way, but we'll drill a hole through the bottom, maybe about an inch up to about this part here. We'll leave about a half to a quarter of an inch up here, and then we'll drill the rest of this out. Then after we've drilled that out, we'll take a hollowing tool, which is it's a curved piece of metal with a cutter on the end of it, and we'll hollow it out and leave about a quarter of an inch or less all around. That will hollow the globe and make it light so that it doesn't pull the limb down. Now, before we do that, when we turn our piece round, a raw material round, we're going to make a little plug on this side, and that plug here is going to be the size of that hole. So after it's hollowed, you're going to have this hole plus this plug. We're going to put the plug back into that hole, glue it, and that will seal the globe. Now, what we're going to do is on the walnut, on the lathe, we are going to turn a 1-inch tenon. And then with the small piece, well, first we'll turn it around, but we're going to drill a 1/4 inch hole. Then we'll attach the maple onto the end of the walnut, and it becomes all one piece. And what we'll do is we'll turn the finial. You have to pardon my artwork, I'm not known for my art. And at the very end here, we'll have a contrasting tip that matches the globe. Now we have this ready to turn, and we'll round it with our gouge. Just a little bit more to go. Okay, I think that's going to look pretty good. Now I'm going to turn a tenon over here that will fit in the jaws of my chuck. The size of your tenon should be just a little bit bigger than your jaws fully closed, and the reason for that is that puts the maximum amount of surface area to grip it, and you want to have a flat edge here so that the top of the jaws fit on that. With the piece in the chuck, I have a 1-inch Forstner bit attached on my chuck for the tailstock, and this is a little trick I came up with a couple years ago. Is in order to cut that plug the exact size of the hole, I use the bit as the to give me the size, and this is how we do that. Okay, as you can see, if I turn this down to that size there, it'll be a perfect size to fit in the hole. And we'll make that plug using our parting tool. Now try to get it as close as you can. That's pretty close there. Now remember, if it's too small, it's no good. So if it's too big, you can always make the hole a little bit larger. Before we cut this off with the saw, put a pencil mark so that you can match the grain when you put the plug back in. The next step will be to start turning the globe just a little bit, just enough to give you an idea on how far to drill the hollowing hole. And for that we'll use a spindle gouge. Okay, let's take it down a little bit on this side here with our parting tool. I've taken that down to about a 1-inch diameter, and that's just enough to give me some hefty wood to work with. Plus, it allows me to move in there to with my tool. Gives me room for the tool. Okay, I think that's rounded enough. Now we'll start to drill the hole. You want to be careful not to go so far back that it doesn't leave you anything on the top. Then just take your time. Perfectamundo. Now we can start hollowing. Well, as you can see, the tool rest is turned a little differently here because you have to be able to hold this hollowing tool. This is a Sorby hollower. It's not any grander than anybody else's. Sorby's kind of a famous name, but I just got it for a pretty good price off of eBay. And it's got a tool steel cutter on it, and it works pretty good. I'm sure you can probably make your own or buy another model. It'll work just as well, but I have luck with this one here. Now, you want to be careful in there, and you don't want to take out so much that you cut through. If you cut through, it's ruined. So I like to leave about 1/4 of an inch. It's thin enough that it lightens it up tremendously, but it's thick enough if somebody drops it, it won't break it. Okay, let's get started and take your time. Now, I like to check it frequently, and I got a little bit of way to go. But up here in the front, you want to leave about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch, and that's so the plug will sit in there, so you don't really want to touch that part. And you want to go all the way to the back and try to get it as round as you possibly can. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect because nobody's going to see that. But like I said before, you just don't want to get it so thin that it goes through. I suspect I'm getting pretty thin over there. So I have here a homemade thickness device. You measure it there and it comes out here. See, that's pretty darn good. I'm going to leave that as it is. And I have here an automatic hole cleaning device, which is actually a bellows that I made. It's probably the best. See what I mean? No electricity. Now let's put that piece in there. Okay, remember I said before you wanted to have a couple of pencil lines to mark that? Well, that's what we did there. And look at that. Look at that. That hole's perfect. If that was any more perfect, you wouldn't believe I did it. Now I have here super glue gel. And you could probably use any glue that you like. I like super glue because it doesn't take very long to dry, and it does a pretty good job. Now you could use ordinary carpenter's glue. That stuff is good too. I mean, that's excellent. It just takes a little longer to dry. Now we'll let that dry for a few minutes, and then we'll actually turn the globe. And so now we'll turn the globe around, and we'll use our spindle gouge. This is one of my favorite tools, and you got to make sure you keep it sharp. I have a special sharpening jig here. Okay, let's get started. Now I like to make my globes a little elongated in the middle. And I do it all by eye. I don't have any jigs for that. First thing we'll do is we'll part it down a little bit more, to maybe about a half an inch. I'd say that baby's ready for the Sandman. I use WD-40 when I sand to keep the dust down. Doesn't take very much. This is 240 grit sandpaper. Boys, that's as smooth as a baby's bottom. I just put in a 3/8 inch drill bit. And now we're going to drill the hole for the top finial and the bottom finial. Take it slow. Before we cut it off of the lathe, we'll put a coat of sanding sealer on it. I mix sanding sealer, lacquer-based sanding sealer with a lacquer thinner 50/50. It works just as well, plus it dries in a very short time. Minutes. This is dry already. It's only been about 2 or 3 minutes. Okay. Carefully cut it with a small saw. Alright, I've got the globe mounted onto the article holding device while I paint it thing, and we'll give it a coat of lacquer. I'm going to show you how to make this finial. This is walnut and maple made of the same globe material, and I just join them together and I turn it all as one. I'm going to show you how to do it. Makes for a pretty nice looking finial. And now we'll carefully turn a 1/4 inch tenon. Now, don't be too concerned about the chatter because you're going to get some being this far out. Just take your time. Light cuts. Now it's a good idea to start sanding when you're this far out too. We'll also sand that a little bit. Let's do the top part. For tight quarters like this here, where I have to make tight arcs, I use about a 1/4 inch spindle gouge. Now that line there is to prevent the fibers from splitting when I cut the tenon. Now, in order for the globe and the finial to seat correctly, you have to undercut this, the top of the finial here, where it actually meets the globe. And I have a special tool for that. That's to ensure that it seats flat. Okay. This finial's done except for the sanding. For the sanding, I'll use 320 grit sandpaper with WD-40. Always move your rest out of the way. Where the two pieces of wood meet, I'm going to make it a little bit more pronounced by just taking the edge of my skew and putting it in there and cutting it. Sorry, I didn't mean to shake the camera. Not too shabby. This could have been a little rounder. Okay, I've got the piece that I cut off from the finial, and we'll make the top finial, where the hook goes in. I've given the pieces, the bottom finial and the top finial, a coat of lacquer sanding sealer. Now I'm going to attach the bottom finial onto the globe using super glue. There. Now you see what I mean by undercutting that, how that fits in there flat? Just looks a lot better. Alright, and the reason I did that is so I can just put the whole thing on the stand and then give it a coat of lacquer. Boy, look how that grain's brought out. I prefer lacquer because I think that makes a better looking ornament. But there's people that don't don't want a glossy ornament. So for them, what I'll do is I'll maybe use a paste wax and give it like a semi-gloss sheen, or sand it with beeswax and paste wax, or a combination of mineral oil and paste wax. Gives it a flat look, more of a natural look. But myself, I like the glossiness of a good lacquer finish. And one of the reasons why I did it this way, to attach the finial onto the globe, is that now I can give the globe a second coat. And just have them both dry at the same time. And we'll give the top finial, like I call it the top finial, I don't know if there's another proper term for it. I guess you can call it the place where the hook goes. Give that a coat of high gloss varnish. Well, the hook part of the finial is dry, so we'll attach our eyelet in there, and the way you keep it from pulling out is make a 90-degree bend on the very end. See? It also allows it to go around. Okay, let's attach the top finial to the globe. Again, using super glue and being careful not to get the super glue on your fingers. Put it in there. Put the eyelet in there. That's all there is to it. Let's give it a test. Have a holly jolly Christmas. It's the best time of the year. I'd be proud to use that Christmas ornament. Well, everybody have a Merry Christmas, and I'll see you after New Year's.